Last night my fiancé left in the evening to give a friend's son a ride back to his home. She implied she'd be home before 9. She left at around 7 hours 45 minutes, 10:15 rolled around and she still wasn't home. I texted and she apologized to me, saying that her friend's son was actually in the next town over, maybe 30 minutes away, and she was coming home now. 11:45 rolled around and she still hadn't come home, so I called her to no answer. Texted her to no response. I was getting very upset. 12:30 rolled around and still no response and no answer to my phone calls. I was extremely angry. 1:30 rolled around and my anger had completely transformed into worry. Not answering my calls and texts not read. Around 1:45 I called the police. I have always heard that the first 24 hours of someone being missing is the most important, so I didn't want to delay. I asked them to let me know if there had been any traffic accidents involving her car, and the operator told me that they would put out the word and send some cops to check along the route she would travel. I called all the hospitals in the area to check if she has been checked in, and I waited outside watching the road for her car for 3 hours, partially because I didn't want the kids to hear me on the phone with hospitals, and secondly because I was sick with worry. At 7 a.m. she came home. She apologized for being out and said she had no excuse. She was driving home and felt tired, like she was falling asleep at the wheel, so she pulled over to the side of the road to sleep. When she did that, she found that her brand new phone had stopped working. She says she napped anyway because it was the responsible thing to do, and then came home at 7 a.m. to bring the kids to school and get to work on time. I immediately called the police and told them that she had come home safely and gave them the case number and told them to stop searching, which they did. My fiance brought the kids to school and left for work. I set out to start cleaning. Cleaning de-stresses me sometimes, and I got a call from a policeman asking where she worked. I told him, and asked why, and I was informed that it was their policy to check on the person's wellness after a missing person is found. I asked them to not go by her work but to give her a call instead. He said he couldn't promise. My fiancée is relatively new to her job. A police officer showed up and asked to speak with her. She is now enraged at me for calling the police and sending a cop to her work and making her look bad. She is saying I overreacted and that she wasn't missing and that I was punishing her for doing the responsible thing and not driving while drowsy. She is saying that she is never going to leave the house again except for work, because she is afraid I'm going to call the cops on her again. So did I overreact? Should I have waited 2 days like she suggests? I asked my ex for a divorce 2 months ago and I found out a week later that my sister's husband was going to be his solicitor. I wasn't completely surprised as my ex has helped his career a lot, but I was still hurt when my sister told me. I've avoided him since finding out, but my parents invited everyone over for dinner and I missed them, so I went. I tried really hard to bite my tongue, but he kept referring to me as my ex's wife and told me that if he was me, he would stay married because I was going to lose a lot if I divorced my ex. I ended up telling him he was a real piece of shit in front of everybody, including his daughters. My sister got angry at me for saying that in front of her daughters, but I was so mad I told her I didn't care because he was a bastard, so now she's pissed at me. My brother brings over his girlfriend to a pizza and movie night. I get the $10 Costco pizza for everyone. The only toppings they have is pepperoni or cheese. I get one of each. We also have some wine in a can, Coke and bottled water. Other than that it's a BYOB or wine. The girlfriend gets there and acts like the pizza is disgusting and asks if we can order anything else. I said no. She asked my brother to go get her this pizza she likes, a medium cost $24. I told my brother if he goes to take her with you and you are not coming back with a special pizza just for her. She makes him leave before 10 minutes into the movie because she was offended that we didn't go out of our way to make her welcome. My brother has been calling me all sorts of names and calling me cheap. I don't think it was my responsibility to cater to one person at the party, and it's rude to get a pizza just for yourself. He called me trashy, and I said the only trashy one at the party was his girlfriend, and not to bring her around again until she learned some manners. I have never really wanted children. I told my husband this many times over the early years of our relationship, and once we were married I tried my best to really stress that. He never seemed to mind this and always agreed that he didn't want children. This was going well until I got pregnant about a year into our marriage. I knew I did not want the baby and assumed my husband wouldn't either, but when I told him, he was excited. He ended up convincing me to go through with the pregnancy. And so I did. Flash forward to today, and our daughter Ria is 15 months old. I really do love her, but I'm exhausted. My husband works full-time and I am a som. I'm with her almost 24/7, I never have a break, I do everything with her. I get her up in the morning, feed her all 3 meals, play with her, bathe her, change every diaper, take her out for toddler classes, arrange playdates, and put her down again at night. Last night, our routine was going as usual when my husband got home. The baby had been particularly difficult that night and I was reaching my limit. I asked him if he could put her to bed that night so I could lay down. I expected him to say yes, as he hardly sees her with work, and she usually is asleep by the time he gets home. But instead, he snapped at me. Apparently, he'd had a very long day and he needed to lay down. I was shocked. Literally never been so angry in my life. I went and put Ria into her crib before I responded to him. I feel horrible, but essentially what I said was that I never wanted to be a mom. I never wanted our daughter. He did. So why is it all on me to care for her? Why can't he just make a bottle and read the baby? He wanted a damn book. He was immediately furious with me. He couldn't believe what I had said. He hasn't talked to me since, so, am I the asshole? I'm pretty much a practical nudist, meaning that I love to wear as few clothes as practical. Naturally, in social settings I try to be more careful. My BF and his roommate have a pretty sweet apartment downtown, so we spend most of the time there. He's a really nice and chill guy, and on days my BF and I don't want to get intimate, we just hang out in the living room drinking, smoking, and watching movies. Sometimes I end up just hanging out in a towel after a shower. I explicitly checked with the roommate that this was okay and he didn't mind. Unfortunately now, he has a new jealous girlfriend who doesn't hang out with us sometimes, but she still feels like she needs to police what I'm wearing in the apartment of my boyfriend. We got into a bit of a stupid text message exchange when she found out, and she's clearly jealous and insecure. It doesn't help her self-esteem, I guess, that 9 times out of 10 people are gonna say I'm the hotter person, beauty is in the eye of the beholder and all that. I'm not self-centered, it's purely a comfort thing. It's not remotely sexual for me, so I think I'm in the right holding my stance. Am I the asshole here? I got married to my wife 2 weeks ago. We kept it simple and sweet, and held the wedding and reception at a local hotel. I have a stepbrother, Chris. Chris was already an adult when my mother married his father, so we don't really have a relationship and don't know each other that well. Chris is married and they have 11 children ages between 1 and 17. I was apprehensive about even inviting Chris and his family because we never talk, and he behaved really inappropriately at my sister's wedding that was a year ago, but that's another story. During the reception, everyone was on the dance floor or getting snacks and having a good time. One of Chris' kids, F3, kept asking Chris and his wife to take her to the bathroom. Chris and his wife ignored her and kept dancing. The kids started screaming at them and having a meltdown. My aunt offered to take her to the bathroom and Chris told her to ignore her and said it's a power play his kid does. Chris' daughter pulled her dress up and peed on the floor in front of everyone. Chris started yelling at his eldest, F17, to clean the piss up. She started yelling back at him and it caused a whole scene. I got so much secondhand embarrassment, and without really thinking I just told Chris and his family to leave. Chris protested and said he had the situation under control, but I told him to just leave. I mopped up the pee really quickly. The atmosphere was awkward for a bit, but everyone went back to having a good time. My stepdad and my mom are really angry that I asked Chris to leave and told me I was being unreasonable. They said weddings are about family, and that includes the awkward moments. I told them that it's not my fault Chris and his wife let their kid pee on the floor, and that I just can't let that happen at our wedding. Chris and his wife blocked me on social media, and my sister told me that they've been gossiping about me and making very passive-aggressive posts with captions like, "Our family is so crazy, some people just can't handle it." My stepdad and mom have been super cold to me lately and said I should apologize to Chris and his family, but I really don't think they're owed an apology. When my ex-stepdaughter was 14, she said she wanted to study abroad in the UK, but it would be too expensive, so I told her that I'd start saving for that then so that we could actually send her there. I opened a savings account the next day for that, and it was supposed to cover tuition, housing, and some allowance. The next year her mother and I divorced. I still tried to maintain a relationship with her, but that ended quite sour when she said I wasn't her father and I should stop being involved as if I was. I said all right, and that the ball would be in her court then, and we never saw each other again. That was until 2 days ago. She came knocking my door, I invited her in, we sat down, and she asked me if I remembered that promise I'd made her when she was younger. I asked which one, and she said the college fund one. I said I did remember, and she said she wanted some of that money right now to cover expenses, and she'd use the rest to actually study abroad next year. In case you forgot, this was the first time we'd spoken for 4 years. I told her that since we lost contact I repurposed that money a long time ago, so there was unfortunately nothing there to give her. She was rather unhappy about that and said something around the lines of, "Figured, you were always full of shit. So much for I'll always be there, Dad," a callback to when we told her about the divorce and I said I would still be in her life and she could still call me Dad. This obviously upset me, so I responded with the fact that she stonewalled me after the divorce and reminded her that I wasn't her father like she'd said, so she had no right to complain. She left afterwards, and I got a call yesterday from her mother cussing out for ain't being shit. Am I the asshole? My husband and I have totally different taste when it comes to food. That's perfectly fine. However, lately, and whenever we go out to a restaurant, we'd both order different dishes, then he suddenly asks to eat from my dish and would throw a fit if I refuse. He's done this several times and I snapped and told him to stop asking and order from the same dish if he wanted it so bad. Last night, we went out for dinner and ordered different dishes. Before we made the order I asked if he was sure about the dish he picked and he said yes. The food arrived and each of us had our plate and started eating. Literally minutes later, he asked if he could eat from my dish. I looked at him like, "Are you serious right now?" And he went on about how he couldn't residential the looks of the dish and really wanted to try it. I refused and said no. I kept eating and he kept pushing till I blew up and he got quiet all of a sudden. He then got up and walked out. He was furious with me and picked an argument at home when I got back. He said that I acted petty and that all he asked for was a few bites from my meal, and I chose to make a scene and yell and embarrass him instead. We're not speaking to each other right now because of what happened. I feel shitty about it, and I think that I could have just let him have some of the food instead of choosing to die on such silly hill. My husband and I have totally different taste when it comes to food. That's perfectly fine. However, lately, and whenever we go out to a restaurant, we'd both order different dishes, then he suddenly asks to eat from my dish and would throw a fit if I refuse. He's done this several times and I snapped and told him to stop asking and order from the same dish if he wanted it so bad. Last night, we went out for dinner and ordered different dishes. Before we made the order I asked if he was sure about the dish he picked and he said yes. The food arrived and each of us had our plate and started eating. Literally minutes later, he asked if he could eat from my dish. I looked at him like, "Are you serious right now?" And he went on about how he couldn't residential the looks of the dish and really wanted to try it. I refused and said no. I kept eating and he kept pushing till I blew up and he got quiet all of a sudden. He then got up and walked out. He was furious with me and picked an argument at home when I got back. He said that I acted petty and that all he asked for was a few bites from my meal and I chose to make a scene, and yell and embarrass him instead. We're not speaking to each other right now because of what happened. I feel shitty about it and I think that I could have just let him have some of the food instead of choosing to die on such silly hill. I asked my ex for a divorce 2 months ago and I found out a week later that my sister's husband was going to be his solicitor. I wasn't completely surprised as my ex has helped his career a lot, but I was still hurt when my sister told me. I've avoided him since finding out, but my parents invited everyone over for dinner and I missed them, so I went. I tried really hard to bite my tongue, but he kept referring to me as my ex's wife and told me that if he was me, he would stay married because I was going to lose a lot if I divorced my ex. I ended up telling him he was a real piece of shit in front of everybody, including his daughters. My sister got angry at me for saying that in front of her daughters, but I was so mad I told her I didn't care because he was a bastard, so now she's pissed at me.